I'm a chronic late bloomer. Here I am, 55, unmarried, no children. Moved in with a partner for the first time at 48, bought a home at 49, started my business at 53. I could never grasp the rules of the game that everyone else seemed to understand. Go to college, get a degree, marry a respectable man, and have kids. Be understated, deferential, and polite. Become a nurse or a teacher. These are the things my mother wanted for me. She wanted me to have a life that everybody understood, a life that did not need to be explained. I, however, wanted to be Barbara Eden in I Dream of Jeannie. I wanted to live in a sparkling bottle filled with pink velvet cushions. I wanted out of suburbia. I wanted to be free from her expectations. I wanted glamour and magic, and most of all, my freedom. My understated preppy mother suffered silently through my goth phase, and then my purple phase, and finally my pink phase. She would hate this outfit, by the way. The day she died, my dad awkwardly pressed her wedding band and engagement ring into my palm. Here, he said, she wanted you to have them. They felt like a loaded gun, still warm from her hand. I stood there holding those rings, hit with the weirdest cocktail of feelings. Grief, sharp and immediate. Heavy sadness that she stayed trapped in that miserable marriage for decades. And then came the anxiety. I felt like I had been handed a cursed object. And underneath all of that was shame. I felt like I was getting the pity spinster ring, a consolation prize for the daughter who never managed to get a ring of her own. I never fantasized about being anybody's wife. I never played bride or house. That kind of future, marriage, children convention, it always felt like a trap. There is a man I love. I met him in 1994 at a goth club. We had a passionate on-again, off-again affair filled with big feelings and big blow-ups. I thought occasionally about marrying him, but it was complicated, and the timing was never right. He was wild and handsome, terribly exciting, but I never knew how to demand anything more normal. We live together now. He's mellowed from rock star to a man who tinkers in the garage and feeds the birds. Our unconventional arrangement works for us. He makes me feel safe but never trapped. He nurtures me in ways I didn't even know I needed. I grew up in an unhappy home with a lot of fighting. My mother avoided socializing with the neighbors. She knew the whole block could hear him screaming at us. And her shame became our isolation. As her world shrank, I became her confidant. We stood on the back stairs that she smoked. She always told me to make sure I had FU money, to make sure I could leave the fireman she wanted me to marry if he ever became physically abusive. My father, she insisted, never crossed that line. She started drinking during the day just to get some peace. By the time I was 12, I was anxiously monitoring the liquor cabinet. By the time I was 15, she and I were locked in a battle. The more she drank, the less I ate. The thinner I got, the angrier with her I became. My dad had a difficult childhood and never got past it. Underneath his anger, he was needy and helpless. My mother managed him like he was her third child, henpecked, fussed, corrected, or tried to. I have almost no happy memories of him. He worked a lot, and when he was home, he played solitaire or sat in the yard lost in thought. I vaguely remember him teaching me to ride a two-wheeler, running behind me as they took the training wheels off, him letting go of the seat, me finally free, pedaling away forever. I left for college at 18, and I never looked back. I spent breaks working retail jobs off campus or backpacking across Europe. Anything to not be there. No one told me college was for meeting a husband or building a career network. I spent 4 years drinking cheap wine and dyeing my hair increasingly unnatural colors. After college, I moved to Brooklyn and chased excitement. Clubs, bands, art, experiences, parties. In my late 20s, the pressure for convention that was so deeply instilled in me finally caught up, so I went to grad school and I became a social worker. I worked with the chronically mentally ill for years. The chaos of the inpatient unit felt somehow normal. I know now that I chased excitement because safety felt like stagnation. After my mom died, I traveled to Delaware every 6 weeks to check in on my father. I knew that's what she wanted. Early in his grief, he spoke lovingly of my mother for the first time. Story after story about their courtship, his eyes filled with tears. It was like two people describing a crime to a sketch artist. Our recollection of the events didn't quite match up. But it was clear that he had loved her, and he thought that they were happy. He was diagnosed with dementia about a year after she died and ended up in a memory care unit in Delaware. I felt guilty for leaving him up north, but I couldn't bring his anger into the peaceful, loving home I had spent my whole life longing for. In his final weeks, he was filled with bitterness and rage, cursing his attendant and making her cry, shaking his tiny fist at me when I visited, insisting every blonde nurse was my mother, crying and muttering to himself. The tenderness and vulnerability I saw in him the first year after my mother died was swallowed by his illness. But I was so grateful I had that year with him, the year I saw his humanity. I didn't feel like a full adult until both my parents had passed. That's when I finally had all the markings: a mortgage, a partner, a business, and my freedom. I live a beautiful life. I live in a home painted pink and gold and turquoise. Our couch is covered in velvet cushion, an homage to my I Dream of Jeannie dreams. I do sacred work walking women through the threshold of midlife. I do this. I have an amazing, funny, supportive partner who has my back, but it's still not the life my mother wanted for me. The grip of her expectations and my father's anger has finally fallen away. My training wheels are finally off for good, and I'm free to live as I choose. Our parents' marriage is our template that shapes so many of the choices we make as adults. For most of my life, I only saw their unhappiness, the yelling, the isolation, the drinking. But now I know they had their own relationship, completely separate from what I could observe as their child. There are still moments, even 5 years after her death, when I can feel the weight of her disappointment. But more and more, I'm grateful for the life I've carved out for myself. The rings my father pressed into my hand outside her hospice room sit in a box in a drawer. I can't wear them. They feel too heavy, like shackles to their unhappy marriage I was terrified I'd repeat. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Maybe one day I'll have them redesigned into something belongs to me, the girl who survived, defied expectations, and lives happily on her own terms. And in the end, I think it's even better than the life my mother wanted for me.